What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As always, this video is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, Crystals, Bikinis, and BioLongevity Labs. Check the description for those discounts. Today is going to be the opening video of the continuation of the Project Super Heavy series. So, this is where I'm going to break down my off-season cycle, off-season phase, whatever you want to call it. Just don't call it messing, please. So I did the post show rebound. If you haven't checked that out, I did a whole series about how I approached my post show rebound this year. I did it in depth. I talked all about my diet, PEDs, peptides, side effects, blood work. I covered it all. So check that out. I wanted a little bit of a down period away from the tracking and posting during my cruise. I used it as a bit of a down period, not only from bodybuilding and everything related to that, but also just content wise. I just needed a little bit of a break from it. And all of that was to set up me being fresh and excited and not only wanting to look forward to the process of bodybuilding, but also sharing it with you guys. I know not as many people watch these as watch the podcast, but that's okay. I think the people that do watch it, there's something to be had from it. And I think it's cool for me too. So I'm going to dive right into it. So it's just some overall thoughts on how the cruise went. I did a longer cruise than some of the other ones that I've done. I've done 4 or 6 weeks in the past because my labs are always good, even at the end of this past rebound series or cycle where I had done a 24-week contest prep cycle and then another 10-week continuation rebound. So that's 34 weeks on cycle. And twice during that rebound period, I got labs done that looked awesome. Like I could have just continued on. So the cruise, for me at least, cruises are not usually done to clean up my health. I'm healthy on cycle. But with that said, I left a little bit more in. I did 8 weeks and I ended up falling. I had to mess around with the dosing because the EQ is a tricky thing to figure out and how you have a ratio of test to EQ and how um sorry, did I say your test to EQ ratio and how that affects your E2. I always get those mixed up. So I ended up landing on about 600 mgs a test and roughly 300 mgs of EQ. Sometimes I would skip one of the EQ shots every other day if I was feeling like my skin was itchy, if my knees started to bother me. Those are usually signs for me that E2 is too low. But in general, that's about where I landed. I left GH at 10 IUs per day, and I was able to do that with no worsening of the carpal tunnel that I have. And I'm glad that I did that because in other cruise periods that I've done with my coach, Justin Compton, a lot of times he will initially lower the food because you're not going to partition nutrients the same and you're not going to create as much new muscle tissue. So the need for raw materials is less. So he would initially drop food and then kind of just leave it the rest of the cruise period. And this time he treated it like we were basically dieting or like a prep, where every single time that I checked in, it was a reduction in food. And he just kept wanting to drive me further and further down. So I'm glad that I left more PEDs in than what a normal cruise might have been because I ended up looking pretty good. Honestly, the best that I've ever looked at the end of a cruise and the best that I had ever looked or have looked at some of the body weights that I reached. So I ended up getting all the way down to 250 by the end of the cruise. I was about 270 when I started the cruise, came all the way down to 250. Again, just a different approach, not really how I would do it, but knowing that drugs were kept in, I could see some flatness during the process in my legs or my arms, but honestly, I looked pretty damn good. And it set me up, I think, for almost another rebound like effect. So during that period, I used Glen at higher doses. I used SLU at very high doses. And like I talked about, he continued to lower the diet pretty much every time I checked in. So I ended up getting down to 250 ish. Then once we started the plan, we put PEDs back in or elevated them. Um, and without changing the diet at first, he just put the PEDs back up and was like, "Hey, give this a couple of days and then check back in with me and we'll see what it does." And my weight pretty much hung around the same spot. And so that was when he increased the food. Today was a check-in day for me, and it's still pretty early in the morning, so I haven't heard back from him yet. He'll get back to me today. I would suspect that food is going to go back up. But I today was like I said, today was a check-in day, and I looked pretty good, I think, for me. Again, keep in mind if you hear me say that I look pretty good, which is rare, but it's relative to how my physique looks at other times of the year or how it's looked in the past. So weight has come back. I'll talk about the drugs. I'll show you guys the diet. But this morning weight was 256 and definitely the best 256 has ever looked on me. So pretty cool spot to be in. Training wise, this is where I think the way that he handled the cruise in terms of treating it almost like a diet is really paying dividends because training wise for the last week or so, of course I'm getting stronger and I feel way more capable and I want to be in the gym, but also strength wise and especially pump wise, I feel crazy. I feel like what I was missing out on a bit during my post show rebound. So if you watch that series I talked about, there were times where I just felt I continued to feel depleted or flat. I wasn't really looking forward to the gym, which is more mental than anything. But I really felt like through most of my post show rebound, continued to stay on schedule with the gym, not out of excitement, but just out of discipline and knowing I needed to just suck it up and do it. But I never felt full blown. Like there has most of the time I've competed, and then within a week or two, or maybe 3 weeks, you get to a point where the post show pumps are crazy in the gym. That never really came this past year. I think it could have been because I tried some new things with medications to try to manage the GH side effects. During that post show rebound, I ran 20 IUs of GH for the better part of it. And I was trying to manage the water weight and the carpal tunnel that eventually came. So, for example, I was running two blood pressure medications, which I had never done. I was using diuretics. So, I think my fluid balance could have been off. I think at one point, or for most of it, my estrogen was too low. So, there was all sorts of things going on. And there was a lot that I was trying to manage all at once. This time, I can tell you from right off the bat, things are ripping. I feel crazy in the gym. And it's awesome. It's everything that I hoped it would be. So, a couple other observations, both with the post show rebound and then it's carried over into at least the start of this cycle. My food is much lower than where it was at the correlating point of last year's schedule, which I went through some rough gut issues at different points of those periods last year. And I think what it could be is that my body is just using the food better, so it requires less. So that's been a good thing because at this point I'm still very, very hungry for my food. That's with retatrutide in, and even you guys will see I have some Anadrol in, and my appetite is very high. So general goals or general ideas for this cycle in general, I'm not putting a hard schedule on it, but I do like the sense of urgency that comes with having things at least loosely outlined. So I would like to do this cycle anywhere for 16 to 20 weeks. That's not to say if I get to 20 weeks, bloods are good, body composition is good, and I'm growing at a crazy rate and things are awesome, I will just leave it then and I'll just continue to grow. But in general, I need to make a big push. I would say I need to get to about 285 and hold that. 285, 290 would be even better, depending on how it looks. Last off season, I topped out. I think as a consistent weight, I held 278 for a while. I think in terms of what my peak weight was that I touched in the morning, it was 282. So I think if I can bring all that up and have it look better this time, it'll set me up to be much bigger next time on stage. So I do have the loose timeline of wanting to compete here in Florida. There's a string of shows next September. And my idea with that is I would at least go through the timeline and start a prep because it's difficult to gauge how much tissue you've added if you don't at least start the dieting process. Now, if I get to 10 weeks out, let's say, of a hypothetical show, and it's obvious that my body fat still needs to come way down, my weight still needs to come down quite a bit. Let's say I get to 10 weeks out and I'm 255 and it still looks like I need to lose, 20 pounds. I will just reverse it from that point and then go back into growing, which won't be a bad thing. I won't be upset at that at all. It'll be a good spot to slingshot up and grow from. But ideally, I'm not going to actually see a prep through and go on stage until I'm in awesome conditioning at 240 at least. I think that's where the minimum threshold is for me to look like I belong as a super heavyweight on stage. And so with that, there's a string of shows that are all actually somewhat close to where we are in Florida. And my idea is to completely remove the thought of doing a national show or qualifying and then going to a national show. I don't think it's realistic to assume that I am going to grow up into a new weight class and then that first year I will be a national contender for the first time ever as a super heavyweight. I was at the top of the heavyweights this past year, 224, 225 on stage, and was not a national guy. So I don't think it's realistic to assume that in 1 year I could grow up a weight class and elevate myself up to a national level. So my idea for next year competing would be to just have fun and try not to put so much pressure on myself in the way that I have the past couple of years, and also not do the one and done. So there's like 3 shows within a month that are all within an hour or two of where we live. So if I go through with it and the tissue has been added and I do end up competing, I'll probably do 2 or 3 shows in the course of a month or 5 weeks, something like that. And then the idea would be, I'm in stage conditioning around 240. I look awesome from a body fat leanness perspective. I go to some of these regional or local level shows, place well and earn a qualification for nationals. and then basically bank it for the following year, and then take another whole off season to grow into that new bigger frame and weight class, and then aim for something the following year at a national level. That's how I'm thinking about it. I'm not in a rush and I'm not delusional about where I stand in the big picture. So that's the general idea. In terms of what needs to grow or what my priorities are, I think everything needs to grow. I think, again, relative to the rest of my physique or where things have been, I think my back is pretty good. I think my legs are pretty good from all angles. Big priority in my upper body. My arms, especially when I bring my arms overhead, specifically for a front double bicep. In some shots, back double even, and side chest, side try, my arms look pretty decent. But when I lift my arms up, they still don't look very good or fitting for my frame. So arms are a forever priority. I would say my next priority are my shoulders. I want to continue to grow the legs. That way I can almost become one of these shapely limb dominant type physiques where it's an awesome X frame with big arms and big legs. And then so you guys will see how that is reflected in my training split. Like I said, my back has improved a lot. I think it's one of my best body parts, but specifically for a long time, I had my upper back as my focus. I was a rare example or an odd case where right at the start of training years ago, I was able to connect with my lower lats, and I knew the training style that would connect with my lower lats and teres. And so I had good sweep of the lats, but the thickness of my upper back was really shallow. So I spent years with my upper back as the priority. Now I think I've reached a point where my upper back is more dominant than the lower lats, the sweep off the hip of the lats. And so my lower lats in my back training are my focus. So arms, delts, biggest priorities. I want to continue to grow my legs and do what is required so that they stay ahead almost and stay as a dominant body part. Lower lats need to improve, and then I also want to improve my chest. So basically every aspect of my body needs to get bigger. All the while I am set on doing all of this growing while improving my midsection, both in terms of how it looks and the control. And I can honestly say to you guys, if you got my fiance Kelsey in a private moment and asked her for her honest feedback, I think there's been 1 or 2 days since my show in July that I have not done morning vacuums every single morning. And I can tell you there's been a big return in how my midsection looks and how aware of it I am during the day. So again, needing to put on a ton of size and a ton of weight, it also can't come at the cost of my midsection. So I'm determined to put this size on while also keeping my midsection looking as good as I can. And with all that said, let me dive into some stuff for you. So I have um I'll show you guys like, I have some recent photos. I have a couple training clips of movements that I'm going to use to bring those body parts up that I talked about. Um, I have lab work that I got done. I'll start with my diet. So this is where we're at right now. Like I said, today is check-in day. I wouldn't be surprised if food goes up. So right off the bat, I have no cheat meals listed. Kelsey, my fiance, she's in a long off season for her, and so although it's not like we're gonna have many date nights out, I like to cook for her at home, so I'll continue to do that. But in terms of cheat meals that I take, this is how I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna eat with my family and with Kelsey on Christmas. I will probably take Kelsey to dinner for Valentine's Day, and then we will probably do something for my birthday in April. Other than that, I'm just going to be completely on plan because I know I need to get the most out of this that I possibly can. So, with all that said, this is the diet. Straightforward stuff. Like I said, I'm not eating a ton of food right now. So I have whey and cream of rice as meal one. I have to remember that even though I'm screen sharing, there's a lot of people that just listen to the videos. So I'm also going to talk through it. So meal one is whey isolate and cream of rice. Meal two, chicken rice, green beans. At that point on a training day, I go train after meal two. I have some intra carbs, EAAs, creatine, salt. Immediately post workout, I bring this to the gym and have it in the car. So that's whey, cream of rice, blueberries, and honey. Probably my favorite meal of the day, to be honest with you. Meal four is chicken, rice, veggies. Meal five, whey isolate and cream of rice. And then meal six is 96.4 ground beef. And right now I have listed it as 3 rolls. So I just turn that into burgers at home. I make those on the pan every night. And it's awesome. It's something that I look forward to. I know as food gets pushed up, that final meal, the more full you are, the more that you're eating, that final meal can be difficult to get down. And so if it's something that I enjoy and look forward to eating, I think that will make the process better. I also am a pretty big believer in a big, maybe your biggest protein serving of the day being before bed. So that's a lot of the thinking with how this is set up. So right now I'm not doing any machine cardio at all. I just do walks outside and track my steps. I do a morning walk fasted every day. So this is listed as 5 times a week, but I do something every day. The 2 days that I train legs, my morning walk is just a little bit shorter than it normally is. But so 5 times a week as my cardio, I do a 25 to 30 minute walk. Usually the loop that I'm taking right now is about 30 minutes. And then separate from that, I do 6,500 steps. So basically I'm doing in total 9,000 steps a day. So that is the diet. I will show you guys PED wise what the plan was, and then we'll talk about what ended up happening. So this was the idea drug wise. Just about 1,500 mgs a test, roughly 600 milligrams of EQ, 900 milligrams of DECA. I am doing 25 milligrams of Anavar pre workout on my training days. I'm doing 25 milligrams of Anadrol every day. And I'm actually taking this before bed to avoid any negatives that might come with Anadrol from or with my appetite. And so I'm like 10 days into this and it's been awesome. I can remember last offseason, Compton wanted me to start the cycle with same thing, 25 milligrams of Anadrol, but taking pre-workout. And I got about 3 days into it and I couldn't even look at my food and we had to take it out. This time I've been taking it before bed and no negatives at all, not even with blood pressure. Um, but I am getting crazy pumps, like I talked about, crazy strength in the gym. And then I do notice that I get some lower back pumps when I'm out for my morning walk towards the end. Proviron, I like Proviron all year. I know people say that it's pointless, it doesn't do anything, all this stuff. Especially, I'll give you the reasoning why I like it. The Anavar and the Anadrol are going to be short term, 2 to 4 weeks, right? So outside of that, the bread and butter of my off-season cycle is test, EQ, and DECA. And the DECA is very high. It's my second highest compound. So with that, I think there are a lot of benefits with having some DHT in when, especially when nandrolone is high, and I don't have any other DHT in. And Proviron's basically straight DHT. So this, when nandrolone is high, this can help with mood. This can help with libido. So I'm leaving it. I'm on 100 micrograms of T4 all year. With the GH, I have it listed as 11.5. I'll explain to you guys why. So 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those are all days that I'm training priority body parts. I do 13 IUs of GH. The other 4 days a week, I do 10 IUs of GH. So I'm never doing that bigger shot 2 days in a row. And then even Saturday and Sunday, there's 2 straight days that I just do 10. Over the course of the week, the average is 11 and a half. And I'm doing that because I'm just trying to sneak in some extra GH on those priority body part training days without making my carpal tunnel worse. And so I, at least initially, am a little afraid that if I just went to 13 IUs every day, it would make things worse. So for now, I've been getting away with this, so I'm going to leave it. I'm on 80 milligrams of telmisartan, 5 milligrams of lisinopril. I take the blood pressure medications before bed. I also, you guys will see my labs, and I'll talk about supplements. But um, so with all that said, this is what I thought I was on. I sent my PEDs out to be tested, at least some of them. And where is this damn report? All right, so this was my testosterone that I sent out. I thought it was, it was labeled as 300 milligrams per ml, and it came back and it was just barely above 250 milligrams per ml. So I thought I was doing almost 1,500 milligrams per week. Turns out I was doing about 1,200 milligrams a week. So I've since getting this report, I've since adjusted my dosing. So those numbers in the sheet are what I'm taking, but it needed some adjustment. Peptide wise, based on my labs, my A1C was fine. It was normal, but I would have expected it to be much lower because I had kept retatrutide in throughout, and I was eating less, like I talked about. And it turns out that retatrutide that I was using was underdosed, and so I sent off a new batch, and I have bottles of 5 milligrams of retatrutide, and it came back 99% purity, 4.7 milligrams per. So I just started this new batch up. So now I know what I have, and I know how to get the desired dose. I'm doing 1 milligram of SLU every day, and I'm just doing that fasted. From my experience, this just seems like it has the SLU. It seems like it has you ripping through carbs more quickly. And because of that, I know some people have taken a pre workout. I've done that myself, but if I'm growing, that's not what I want. So I want the carbs to kind of be spared and facilitating fullness while I'm training. So I just take the 1 milligram fasted in the morning before my walk. Mot C, I'm doing 2.5 milligrams per day. I got a report back here. What I thought was um, a kit of 40 milligram vials of Mot C. Oh, that's the test. Man, I'm all over the place. So the Mot C came back 99% purity, 46 milligrams per vial. So I have a ton of that. And in a fat loss phase, I think Mot C is awesome for cognition, mitochondrial function. I felt like I never or I'll say this, during my prep, it took me a very long time to feel like I was dieting. And I attribute a lot of that to Mot C. It gave me energy even when I was depleted. Another huge benefit of it, though, is insulin sensitivity and carbohydrate uptake. So I'm taking the retatrutide at 2 milligrams a week, and I'm taking 2.5 milligrams of MOTS-C every day. I'm doing 500 milligrams of injectable L-carnitine on training days. I do a milligram of oral BPC every day. For the first 4 to 6 weeks, I'm going to do 1.5 milligrams of SS31 every day. You'll see on my labs, I ran this for the first time ever during my cruise, and my kidney function is incredible. So that was really eye opening. I'm running this GHK copper blend. I'm doing that intramuscular, split bilaterally into whatever I'm training on training days. So, for example, if I'm training arms, I put it into my triceps. If I'm doing chest and shoulders, I put it into my shoulders, so on and so forth. And then I also am doing 1 milligram of injectable BPC before bed with my GH every night. And for me, I put that into the skin of my kneecaps. It sounds crazy. I know it looks and feels kind of bizarre, but it has gone a long way for keeping my knees feeling healthy. So I showed you guys the test, the Retta. So I sent off a big batch of GH, or not a big batch, but I sent a sample of a batch that I have a ton of, and it came back 96% purity, very low dimer, and it came back at a little more than 40 IUs per bottle. So, for anyone that says that generics aren't real and you should only use pharmacy and it's a huge difference and all this stuff, tough luck for you. That's all I'm going to say. So I'll show you guys. I have a couple photos of how I look, and I'll just run through these here. Front lat spread. You can see here that I still feel like my legs had flattened out at this point, like during the cruise, quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to seeing like the pop come back to the shot. Side chest. I've actually done a lot of direct front delt work because it felt like my rear delts and my side delts had kind of started to outpace my front delts. And I'm starting to see the return on it, especially in this pose. Back double. This is what I was talking about. You see, like my rear delts are pretty good. My traps are pretty good. And I just really want to bring up more of this lower lat. More, I want this to sweep and start lower and be thicker in this pose, especially. Than most muscular. So most muscular is always a good test of truly how muscular somebody looks. So this is where we're starting at. I talked about wanting to improve my lower lat, so I'll just show you guys a couple of the movements that I'm doing. These are the first two movements that I do when I train back. So right now I'm using this row, this prime row. I'm doing it single arm. All of the lat priority stuff that I do is one arm at a time because I can kind of lean and focus off to one side. I have this predominantly loaded in the stretch position with some weight in the middle peg. And you'll see I'm just letting everything wrap around my rib cage hard to the front. And then from this full stretch position, really what I'm thinking about is trying to bring my shoulder and my elbow down. And I want to bring my elbow as close to my torso right into my hip as possible. Another big thing that I see people miss out on when it comes to lat training, especially like single arm lat training, you'll see that the working side foot and leg are braced and I'm like flexed at the hip. So this side, this working side hip is very, very stabilized. I I have it up against this pad and I have it pushed forward so that it's stable. And then same thing on the pull down. I see people that have like, use the opposite leg to stabilize themselves if they do a single arm lat movement. And I think you're just kind of missing the boat. So notice my non-working foot is kind of off to the side, and then that working side foot is stabilized on the bench. And I'm really like flexed at the hip. I'm trying to keep my hip and my lower back on that side just completely firm so that the lat can wrap forward and around it. I love this. I'm lucky enough that the gym that I have has probably the best selection of equipment that I've ever been in. The gym's not enormous. I've been in gyms that have more equipment, but I like to say the owner's name is Alvin. He owns it with his wife. And I like to say that Alvin has a high batting percentage, or a batting average, right? Um, so what I was getting at is we do have, one of my favorite pieces is the Nautilus pull down. However, I've come to appreciate a cable variation more, especially when stabilized on a bench. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to show you guys in terms of training. I can show you guys the split actually. So we talked about PEDs, talked about peptides. I'll show you guys the labs that I got done at the end of the cruise. Lipids, trigs, LDL, everything looks great. HDL is low, and that's just always going to be. So even I wanted to take it a step further and get my ApoB done. You guys will see. So this one, CRP, normally is less than one. And I realized after the fact, like a dummy, I went and got these labs done, and I had been working through like a little bit of an ear infection. So I think that probably drove that up higher than what it normally would be. I'm going to go get labs done. I actually have labs scheduled for a little bit more than a week from now. I'm going December 18th for labs again. But, lipid panel looks great. CRP is normal. So the apolipoprotein is awesome. They want it to be less than 90. Mine was at 59. This is just basically a more in-depth look at your HDL and LDL. So, being that my HDL is low, this apolipoprotein A1 came back low, and then the ratio is off. So I've never taken any measures to try to improve my HDL. And then seeing this, I figured I would. So what I added to my already vast stack of health supplements is I added an immediate flush niacin product. You guys can probably see how red my face is. I just had my first meal and my supplements. So I'm curious to see how that affects it all. My fasting glucose on this day was 86, EGFR 111, which is awesome. This is what I was talking about a little bit with the underdose retatrutide. Um, A1C was 5.2. I've seen guys that are coming back with like 4.8, 4.9 on retatrutide. And so that's why I was like, man, there's something off here. And sure enough, it turns out it was underdosed. So this is the other thing that I noticed. It definitely had some running some EQ during the cruise. It had some effect on my blood viscosity, my red blood cell totals. So hemoglobin is the one that's high. 18 is definitely high. Hematocrit being at 53, I'm not super concerned. I usually tell clients at 55 I'd be concerned. But that was part of why I adjusted my supplement stack as well. So besides the niacin, I added nattokinase before bed, and it's either 8,000 or 10,000 FU as a measurement. And I do that before bed. And so I'm hoping that those help with these numbers as well. And that was really all that I tested. I didn't bother with my like test and E2 during the cruise. I figured I'll go get that checked in a couple of weeks once the cycle's stabilized. training wise, this is the last piece I'll show you. I didn't even bother to write it out, but this is what the split is going to be. So I do biceps before chest and delts. I do triceps before back and rear delts, biceps again before legs. I take a rest. I do arms and delts, and I'm going to be doing this. This is going to be something interesting. I'll probably film this one day, but I have a friend down here, Matt Chrisman. He does all sorts of therapies and he has all sorts of certifications. And so one of the tools that he uses is the new fit, the newbie machine. And so I actually have him coming into the gym with me every time that I do arms and delts. And he wraps up my arms in the new fit machine to generate greater stimulus there. So if you guys end up seeing that I have 25-inch arms and I look like Nick Walker next year, that's why. So I think that'll be cool. That'll be something I'll film and show you guys. But it's something, I just wanted to feel like I've done everything that I possibly could to improve, especially like every body part that I could. And so I'm going to be training on the new fit machine with arms and delts. Another thing that I didn't mention is that after this training session, later in the afternoon of this bicep and leg day, I every single week have a massage therapist, Marco from down here in Florida. Marco Rivera, awesome guy. He comes over to the house and we do 80 or 90 minutes. And a big part of what he's noticed on my physique is how tight the tissue is around my elbows and up and down my biceps and triceps. So I'm hoping that the combination of getting work done on that area or those areas and then adding more stimulus with the new fit training will lead to better results than they ever have. Again, I just wanted to feel like I've exhausted every possible resource I could. And then day 6 is just legs. That's Saturday. And then I'll rest Sunday and start it all over. The only caveat that I didn't write down on paper that I will just tell you guys is I'm going to follow this split for 2 weeks. And then every third week, this day 3, this second leg day, or one of the 2 leg days, I'm actually going to take a rest. So every third week, I'm going to end up only training 4 days and taking 3 rest days. And I think that will keep me fresh and will be able to extend how long I'm getting productive training in before needing like days off or what other people would call a deload. So it'll be 2 weeks of 5 days a week. Week 3, I'll only train 4 days, and then I'll go back to the same schedule and repeat it. So, all right, guys, that's everything. I know I can be long-winded. I hope that this is covering everything that you guys would want to hear for those of you that are interested. If you guys made it this far, leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys want to see or hear about regarding this series. Again, keep in mind, this is a separate series, so I'll continue to do the podcast with guests and the boys every week. I will continue to do solo Q&As where I answer anything about your personal situation or anything that you want answered. And then this is going to be a third series. So let me know in regards to this specifically what you want to hear or see. I know a couple people mentioned maybe like a full day of eating video or a full on in the gym training video. I can absolutely do that. I'll probably do that with the day that I train arms and delts with Matt on the new fit machine. And so until next time, guys, thanks for checking this out. And I am out.